In this video, we're going to look at measures of central tendency, which is a fancier term for averages, and we're going to use this to answer questions such as which age group consumed more sugar in January, why do people take part in sugar-free February. Now, when you're looking at data, you'll almost always want to summarize it with some kind of average value. And in maths, there are three types of average, which you've probably been hearing about since primary school: mean, the median, and the mode. Now, in the real world and in Excel, when people talk about the average, they're usually referring to the mean, but we'll try to stick to the correct terms here. All three averages do have their uses. Firstly, let's take a look at how we can calculate the mean in Excel. It's shockingly easy. Let's say we want the mean sugar intake in January. Now, the mean will be the total sugar intake of all 2,000 people, shared equally amongst those 2,000 people. And we can select the January sugar column, and straight away down the bottom here we get the mean indicated by the average, 1971.95 grams. If we want to look at it by a particular subgroup, such as just the oldest group, we can filter by just the oldest group. Go back, highlight the column again, and there we go. We can see that the mean for just the upper age group is considerably lower than the overall mean. Now, if we want to do this for more groups, though, that gets really tedious and inefficient. So let's turn to our pivot table to see how we can use that. Okay, in our pivot table, start by clearing all the fields from the table by dropping them out. Now, what you want to do is drag the January sugar variable into the values. Now, if we right click on it and go to summarize values by, you can change this to the average. At the moment, it's just showing us the total sugar consumed in January by everyone. If we right click, change that to average, that gives us that same mean that we saw earlier, 1,972 grams. Note that we could also choose to show the maximum here, the minimum, and there are other options too that we'll look at later. Now, if you go back to the fields bit over here, if you drag age bands into the rows, drop it in, we can immediately see a summary of the mean by each age group. If we right click and just get rid of some decimal places here, because that's a bit unnecessary. No decimal places. Now, we can see straight away that the youngest age group consumes the most sugar in January. The oldest age group consumes the least. You can play around this for other subgroups as well, so we can put gender in there, we can put motivation level, etc. The trouble with the mean, though, is that if there are extremely big or small values, they will skew the mean and they'll make it a bit unrealistic. Let's have a look at the average sugar intake here in January. Now drop age bands out for a moment. At the moment it's 1972. Now what we can do, if we drop that into the January sugar intake into the filters box, we actually add a filter here and we can choose to exclude particular values from our pivot table. If you click in the drop down, select multiple items, we can deselect a couple of values. We can deselect these two here. Now if we click OK, note that that's gone down by a couple of grams. Now obviously this isn't a massive change, but if two people out of our 2,000 can affect the average like that, then you can imagine what would happen if we had a really extreme value such as 10,000 grams. Right, we just need to remove that filter now because we don't want that in our later calculations. So select all, remove it from our filter here. Now, for that reason, the median is sometimes a more useful measure of average. It tells us the middle value in a set of numbers, so it doesn't matter how big the biggest value is. But the median is a bit of a pain in Excel. Let's open a new sheet. call it January intake. Now we can calculate the median quite quickly by doing equals median, open brackets, and then if we go to our data, we can just select that January sugar column, close our brackets, hit enter, and there we have it. There's our median, 1,900 grams. But if we want to do this for particular subgroups, like different age groups, we have to use quite a complex median and if formula here, or have separate tables for each age group, neither of which is very quick to do. Now, given that we don't have too many really extreme values in our data set, the mean will suffice for this project if we're comparing averages for different age groups. Now, finally, the mode tells us the most common value in a set of values. Now, we can use a formula for this, equals mode, but it's probably easiest to look at it in a pivot table and just look at which value has the highest count. So, going back to our pivot table, let's see the modal reason for people taking part in sugar-free Feb. If we clear our fields, we're going to pop reason into the rows box. Now, at the moment, all we've told the pivot table is that we want each row to tell us about each reason. We haven't actually asked it to count anything. Now, if we pop a variable in here that we know always has a value, such as salutation, what it will do is it will count how many salutation values there are for each of these reasons. So there are 251 salutations against family, friends, encouragement. So that's why we've been using salutation all this time. It felt a bit weird before. Now we can see straight away the modal reason for taking part in sugar-free Feb is to be more healthy. That's the one that occurs most commonly. Now, if we have a bigger list where there are more values here, and we want to find the biggest one quite quickly, we'd be able to sort it by right-clicking and sort largest to smallest, and there we get a ranked list of reasons, and that might be quite helpful too. We've seen in this video how powerful the pivot table is. We've used the rows box, we've used the filter to filter out a couple of values. It can do even more as well. If we want to look at groups within groups, we can put something in the column box as well, or even more than one thing in the rows box if we want to. Let's say we want to look at the mean number of social media interactions by age and gender. If we clear it, pop social media interactions into the values box, change that to an average, the mean, and then if we put age bands as a row and also put gender as a column, we get that breakdown by both age and gender. We get rid of our unnecessary decimals here. Maybe let's stick to one decimal place. We can see, first of all, that females on average interact more on social media than males. We can see that young people interact more on social media than older people. We can also see where is the greatest difference between males and females. Well, there's not much of a difference between males and females amongst these older age groups, but in this very youngest category, there's a difference of almost 11 interactions, and that's quite useful to see. Okay, have a go at the exercises, check them against the answers, and then move on to the next video.